Hey there everybody, Mark Crilly here. I'm back with another tutorial. This time not really a how to draw tutorial, but a lot of people have been asking me about how to do page layouts for comics and for manga, and so I'm going to try to do in video form a kind of a lesson about one way of doing page layouts. What I'm showing you here is a page that shows me working on my dialogue prior to drawing a page layout. Now notice that on every page you see lines crossed out. This is where I'm working out, choosing, carefully choosing hopefully the right words, the best dialogue, and so forth before I go on to the next stage of actually doing the page layout. So it may not be very glamorous, but this is actually step one in creating a good page layout, making sure that you get, look how messy that gets, making sure that you get all the words down that you want for a dialogue scene. Before you start trying to do the layout. So let me cut to something. What I've done is I've sort of spliced together a series of frames that shows you the dialogue and just sort of the stage directions that you're going to see in a scene from the first book, the first volume in my series, Miki Falls. Eventually I'm going to show the actual final pages as they ended up, but I want to try to go backwards and show you how I might have laid it out if I used a standard, what I call a 6-grid layout, but that'll come later. Let's just go ahead and look at the basic words and text that are going to set this scene in motion. I'll go ahead and splice it in right now. Okay, so there you have it, a pretty straightforward scene there. Miki looking down into Hiro's basement. She's about to discover some kind of a secret, and he runs over and slams the door shut before she can go any further with that. We are going to turn this into a series of page layouts, but first let me show you a copy of Bone by Jeff Smith, one of the great masters of comic book storytelling. If you haven't seen it, by all means, you should definitely check it out. And look at the series of pages here. Notice how he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 squares on this page, 6 on the following page, and even the page after that, 6 squares. It's a pretty good, sturdy way of doing a page layout. And it's not only American comics that do that. If you hang on a second, I've got a copy of the ever-popular Shonen Jump. And right over here, we have a very similar kind of a manga page layout. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I want to use that as my method for trying to lay out this sequence. And we're going to begin by doing thumbnails. Let me kind of take a break here to prepare how I'm going to do it, and we'll be right back. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about doing thumbnail sketches. As you can see, this is not fantastic artwork here. This is just sort of problem solving, and you don't spend any great amount of time on it. You just sit down and try to do a basic, quick little sketch of each page to figure out where everything's going to go. So you saw when I had those words written out sort of notebook style, that the beginning had Miki narrating a little sequence, and she says, I crept over to get a closer look. Behind the door was a stairway leading down to the basement, and there, at the bottom of the stairs, I decided to try to do this as a sort of zooming in effect. So if you look here, I've drawn Miki just really loosely, a drawing of Miki standing at the doorway looking down into the basement, and this is where the text would go right here. Then we start to zoom in a little, so we get a little closer in on her face. Notice I'm really just not doing any super details, just sort of indicating where things are going to go. A little more of that text as I had planned it. And then finally a really tight shot that zooms right in on one eye, kind of showing this shocked look on her face, and hopefully making the reader very curious as to what is it that she is seeing at the bottom. And then, of course, in classic Hollywood style, we have a big crashing sound that interrupts, prevents us from seeing what she saw at the bottom of the steps, which is revealed eventually, but not in this sequence. So there's this big crashing sound. It's a tray of teapots, or a teapot and teacups crashing to the floor. She whips around in this panel here to see what is it, and then we see her point of view, and this is supposed to indicate Hiro and his mother. They were in the kitchen, and now they've come out, and they are both incredibly shocked to see that Miki has come so close to discovering Hiro's big secret down in the basement. So that's how I worked out the 6 panels of this first page. Now I want to move over to this next page, and this time live on camera I'm going to try to do some quick rough thumbnail sketches to show you how you might do it. Now the first thing that happens after Hiro sees that Miki is peering down into the basement is he comes running to stop her from opening up the door. Now, from going down into the basement or seeing anything more than she's already seen. So I begin by indicating him running. I decided to sort of zoom in on Hiro's legs as he runs across the floor. So we don't even see Hiro, we just see his feet, or his legs and his feet, and then a kind of a sound effect. I decided to go with the sound effect chep, chep, chep. The sort of sound of slippers, I guess, going across the floor as he runs. So let's zoom in a little because I'm sure you can't see much of anything, but you can see really basic, nothing beautiful about my drawing style here. Just sort of, for my own purposes, showing myself, okay, we're going to see his legs running across the panel. Then in the next one, let's show Hiro's face as he is really concerned about what's happening here. Just very quickly kind of indicate this. He's running across. It's sort of a zooming effect. Maybe we'll, as I finish drawing this, we'll get some motion lines in here, which you see so much in manga. And so that shows what we're going to see in this panel. Coming down to the next one, I thought it would be interesting if we zoom in on his hand, breaking everything down into the individual actions here. We see his hand flying forward, the hand that is eventually going to slam this door shut. So just a quick sketch of a hand here. Again, nothing brilliant in terms of the artwork, but maybe some more motion lines as this hand is flying across, and I think I'll even get a sort of a sound effect, sound that indicates the speed with which this hand is flying through the air. Then come down to one more panel. We're going to get Miki's reaction. She's sort of like afraid at what's going on. You know, is this hand, is he going to hit her, or what's going on? She doesn't know what's coming next, but let's have a shot of her sort of moving out of the way, unsure of what's going to happen as Hiro comes running toward her with his hand out like this. And finally, moving down to one more panel down here, the actual slam as the hand hits the door and slams it shut. Okay, beautiful hand there. That's the great thing about the thumbnails, is you really don't have to be that great of an artist to do them. You're just sort of working out very quickly the basics of the page layout. Now this last one is going to have quite a bit more in it. We've got Miki back against the wall, sort of near the door. We've got the door a little bit from the side, and we've got Hiro right up with it completely shut. And this sort of momentary pause as he maybe figures out what to say now that he has done such an abrupt action. And then I'm going to pull all the way up to one last panel on this next page, a relatively simple panel. We're just going to see Hiro's face as he's looking down at Miki and has come up with his very simple way of resolving the situation. He simply says, "It's time to go. Time to go, Miki." And that's basically how this sequence ends. So there would be a word balloon here of him saying time to go, and maybe just a little indication of him breathing heavily, having run across this sort of panting sound. And that's basically it. Let's pull back a little, and you can see this thumbnail layout. Using the 6-panel grid system, we end up with really quite a number of panels left over on this last page, but those could just be used for going on to the next sequence. This is not how I ended up doing it in Miki Falls, and I'm going to do a separate video. It may be kind of weird, but I'm going to do a separate video that shows how I did the layouts for Miki Falls. But I thought it would be fun to sort of mock up and show you what the pages might have looked at like if I had done this 6-page layout system, or 6 panels per page layout system. So let me go ahead and show you the pages as I printed them out according to this system. Okay, so this is going to be leaving out a lot of intermediary steps, but basically I just want you to get a sense of how we go from this rough layout form in the thumbnail sketch to something a little closer to final artwork. Obviously I could spend an hour talking about how I drew each one of these individual panels and so forth, but that's not really what this video is about. It's more about the thinking that went behind each panel layout and the page layout as a whole. So we get Miki from a certain distance here, establishing where she is. We get the text in. Moving over to the next panel, we get to move in a little closer. We're, letting her eyes and her facial expression be the focus of it. The interplay between the drawing and the words is just key to any kind of good layout. And here I wanted to make sure that we were at the very height of curiosity on the part of the reader with this spot here where we dramatically see only half of her face and this look of great concern or curiosity on her part. And there at the bottom of the stairs, and of course that's exactly when the big crash occurs of the tray of teacups hitting the floor. Now this one is probably not the way I would normally draw it. I would not be quite so close in on her head. I had to work with what was there in the final page layout. Probably I would be pulling back a little more so that we see the entire head, maybe some motion lines that show how her head is turning around so that she's no longer looking in the basement. She's looking toward the source of that sound. This one also a little bit off-center. I think these two figures would be closer to the dead center of this panel as we see what she sees, Hiro, and his mother standing there. And of course having the tray and so forth on the ground is key to helping us understand where the tray came from in relation to the mother, seeing that she was probably the one who dropped it. Let's move on to the next one that you saw me actually do the layout for, the thumbnail layout for. Here you get a closer look at the legs and the chep 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 sound of him running across the floor. This was actually one where my editor advised me that we needed to see his legs and his feet identifying the source of that chep 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 sound that I had created there. So this is a good example of listening to your editor. This panel may have not been in the original the way I was doing it. I may have just moved directly to this one where we see Hiro moving forward in space. After that, we get down to this one of the hand. I like this 3-panel sequence here where we see the hand moving. We see Miki sort of dodging out of the way, and slam, the door gets shut. And in the final layout in the actual book, you'll see that these are not big squares, they're smaller squares. It has a little more of a boom, boom, boom feeling when you get to that point. But down here, we have a big quieter panel that is sort of after the big moment of the slamming of the door. We see the two of them. There's a very sort of awkward situation. And I use this HNNH, my invented strange sound effect for... I didn't know how to write that, so I just wrote HNNH. How do you like that? So that's that layout using that 6-panel grid for that page. And finally, the way it worked out, a little bit strange, but we end up with just one panel on the last page, and Hiro's parting words to Miki in a way, "Time to go, Miki." So there you have a basic system of going from words, written words on paper, to thumbnail layouts, and finally, though of course it takes many hours to do, going from the thumbnails to real final artwork. And another people, you know, a lot of people are asking me about the text and the word balloons. How do you do that? Let's definitely save that for another video. That could be a whole other thing on its own. But I hope that you found this useful for getting a sense of how comic book creators decide what goes into each panel and how many panels are needed for each moment. Like, for example, this zooming in, I felt that we needed at least 3 to have that feeling of zooming in. These things are all sort of trial and error, and it goes according to personal preference from one comic book creator to another. Maybe not the most exciting video I've ever done, but for those of you who like to do comics or trying to make comics, I hope that this was useful for you. And even for those of you who just read comics, I hope it gave you some insight into how comic creators think as they put page layouts together. There is going to be a follow-up to this video in which I show you the real layouts as I did them in the book. Quite different from what you see here. You'll see that my approach to layouts in Miki Falls was much more sort of experimental and getting away from the 6-panel grid system that you see here. Not that one is any better than the other. Many of the greatest comics are done in this traditional 6-panel grid sort of a system. So please don't think that I'm saying that this is beginning and that the way I do it in the final book is advanced. Far from it. It's just 2 different ways of doing things. So that's going to be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for watching. I will be back with a much more standard hands-on how to draw video, I promise, next time. Till then, take care, and we will be back with that next video real soon.